Was I supposed to wear a shirt under this? Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. I've recently just finished a Gothic classic that I had never read before, and it's one that's really popular, one that I'm sure a lot of people are like, what, you've never read that before? And that was Dracula, and I did just upload a vlog of me going to Whitby for the first time to read Dracula for the first time. It was such a fantastic experience, honestly, and it really put me in the mood to talk about Gothic fiction. I love Gothic fiction. Honestly, the past month, I have just been non-stop thinking about Gothic fiction. I'm trying to resist because I have all of my spooky fall content planned, and then after that it's Christmas. I mean, as much as I would love to celebrate Gothicness all year round and Halloween and fall and all of that, I do also want to be able to celebrate Christmas. Honestly, it's a double-edged sword. How am I supposed to live in this world when there are two amazing holidays back to back? Why couldn't one of them have been in the middle of the year so I could have spent 6 months celebrating one and 6 months celebrating the other? Honestly, what good is January through August, other than my birthday in May? Riddle me that. I'm currently drinking blood from my vampiric goblet. I've got to get my iron intake, you know? So what am I doing in this video? Well, I want to talk about my top 7 Gothic novels of all time, and then I want to talk about, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4... 5 Gothic novels that I'm dying to read that I have on my TBR. And honestly, I was going backwards and forwards wondering whether I should make a video like this because, not gonna lie, you would have heard of quite a lot of these, if not all. But I want to talk about my favourite ones, okay? And I want to force on you some of my favourite ones that I think might be a little bit more obscure or a lot of people might know about but haven't actually read yet. And it's my job today to convince you to bloody pick them up and read them. Because if you don't, it isn't only this blood I'll be sucking, okay? Anyway, let's talk about my top 7 Gothic novels, and we might as well start with the one that is probably a little obvious right now, and that is Dracula by Bram Stoker. I did literally just read this, well, earlier this week actually. I can't believe it was that long ago. But I might as well talk about it now because, as I said, I have just uploaded a whole vlog dedicated to this. But this one, it does at the start follow Jonathan Harker, who gets invited to Transylvania to Castle Dracula by Count Dracula himself. Now, Count Dracula is a very charismatic man, but he is also a blood-sucking vampire. You might not know that, so spoilers. But Jonathan does find himself trapped at Castle Dracula, and we are going through, at least at the very start of this novel, his journals. And from there, we get journals from other people that he knows. We meet other characters like Mina and Lucy, and there are other amazing stories in this as well. We have a ship that crashes into Whitby, and we read through the journals of the captain, the strange things that happened on that ship. Crew members going missing. Crew members jumping off the side of the ship themselves, claiming that someone's on the ship. It's so atmospheric. It's brilliantly built up, and I genuinely didn't think that I would gel with an epistolary novel. This is told in letters, in journals, and I wrote them off years ago thinking I would never like them, but Dracula has proven me wrong, and if Dracula can prove me wrong, then I can prove you wrong by making you read it if you haven't yet read it. So definitely give this a go if you haven't already. I kicked myself for not picking it up sooner, and now I feel like I'm a better person for it. So next we have what is probably my favourite Gothic novel of all time. I do genuinely think this might be my favourite one. I keep bouncing between a different one and this one, but I have to say it. It's The Italian by Ann Radcliffe. I love this one so much. I did my dissertation on this at university. I probably mentioned that like 5 times on my channel this past month, but it just shows you just how much I loved this book. And this is one that I feel like a lot of people have overlooked over the years. But The Italian, oh my gosh, it's just so dramatic and amazing. So this one is like this sweeping romance between Eleanor and Vivaldi. And Vivaldi is a noble man, but Eleanor is not a noble woman. So Vivaldi's mother, the evil Marchesa, schemes with a villainous monk and convinces him to kidnap and potentially murder Eleanor, all in order to break this couple up. And we have like such a high stakes family drama. It goes places, it's adventurous, it's gothic, it's gorgeously gothic, it's brilliantly written. It's my favourite gothic for f***'s sake. So read it. How many more times I've got to tell you? This, I definitely say wholeheartedly that this is Ann Radcliffe's best novel. I mean, everyone says The Mysteries of Udolpho, well, whatever. That is good as well. But this is definitely, in my opinion, her best. And it's definitely the most engrossing, the one that really captures your attention the entire way through. It's just so brilliant. So I genuinely do think this is my favourite Gothic novel of all time. I would still say, though, that The Mysteries of Udolpho is another fantastic Gothic book, and definitely in my top 7 of like the 7 I've enjoyed. shite. But if you're going to try an Ann Radcliffe book for the first time, definitely read the Italian first and then go into this one. I genuinely feel like you might appreciate this one more if you kind of fall in love with Ann Radcliffe first. I feel like The Mysteries of Udolpho might be a little bit too long, it might be a little bit too descriptive and boring for a lot of modern day readers, but I genuinely think Ann Radcliffe has this gorgeous way of writing the Gothic that I think really does heighten your senses, and I feel like The Mysteries of Udolpho, it gets under your skin because we follow Emily St. Aubert and she ends up getting imprisoned by the Count Montoni in this fortress, and we have so many fantastic Gothic visuals and archetypes that have come from this novel that we see in modern Gothic today. And this was brilliant enough for Jane Austen herself to parody in Northanger Abbey. So if you love Northanger Abbey, then you will be able to read this and see exactly what inspired Jane Austen to write that. And even though Emily St. Aubert, she is a heroine that might frustrate you a little bit. She is overwhelmed with sensibility a lot and faints a lot. But honestly, I did my dissertation on this and the Italian for a reason. This one, I feel like I need to reread it because there's just so much to it that I feel like it needs a couple of reads for it to really sink in, you know. So I need to read this again. Definitely loved it, but the Italian is definitely better. Okay, so now I've talked about Ann Radcliffe. She is definitely my favourite Gothic writer. A book that I talked about before when I was talking about the Italian and I said, I usually kind of change it between that one and the next one I'm about to talk about. That is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I feel like this is one that is on like everybody's Gothic lists. This one and another one that's also going to be coming up on my list as well. But I feel like this is on everyone's lists for a reason. We follow, for a second there, I blanked on his name. I was like, who's the main character in The Picture of Dorian Gray again? Dorian, he is a gorgeous, gorgeous man. Honestly, if I could write fan fiction on him, I probably would. But he seems to have an eternal youth. But there is a painting of Dorian that ages for him and it ages terribly. Things happen, murder happens, and it's just a frolicking good time. It's quite short, definitely shorter than The Mysteries of Udolpho, for instance, but it's definitely got that gorgeous Gothic style of writing, and it's definitely, I think, more accessible than a lot of the Gothic classics on this list. This is probably the latest Gothic classic that I've mentioned because I haven't picked any modern Gothic. I haven't picked anything in the last 100 years for this list. So it makes sense that this one is going to be the one that's easier to read. But saying that though, it does still have that classic writing style. It just, I feel like it comes across quite direct and I feel like a lot of people will probably understand it more. So much to unpack with this. I believe I might have wrote an essay on this in university as well, and I think I only got a 2-1 on it. I don't think I hit that first. But you know what is a first? My love for it. I'm going to shut up and go to the next one. The next one I read at uni and I probably never would have read it had I not been at uni, and that is The Monk by Matthew Lewis or Matthew Gregory Lewis or MG Lewis. It depends on what edition you get. But there is something so sinister and gothic about cathedrals and churches and monks. Like anything like that really does terrify me. And there is this great dichotomy in Gothic fiction where you have Lewis's male Gothic and Radcliffe's female Gothic. So you pretty much have the nasty versus the nice. And the reason why this is called like nasty and stuff is because of the themes it explores. It's very, very dark, very gruesome, and definitely not as lyrical, I guess, or as lush as Radcliffe's Gothic. And honestly, that's absolutely fine. In fact, it makes The Monk such an engrossing and exciting read. We do follow Ambrosio. He is the titular monk and he starts to see temptation and it leads to his obsession over an innocent woman. There are so many triggers in this as well. When I say that this is a nasty book, I do genuinely mean that. But if you can get into that, then I do think The Monk will probably be one that I think a lot of people will enjoy more than any other Gothic book, mainly because I think it just has that kind of broader appeal of holding your attention because it's so nasty. So I feel like having that as part of the book is something that I think a lot of people will gravitate towards. And it's something that I definitely gravitated towards too, and I thought this was one of the best books I read at uni and definitely kind of started my love for Gothic fiction. So I do all this book a lot. It's not my favourite, but it is one that I think a lot of people will enjoy. Okay, another one that a lot of people do include on their list is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. And I also Absolutely adore this. This one was probably the first Gothic novel I ever read. I probably need a reread of this because I last read it at college and that was a long time ago. But Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, it does follow Victor Frankenstein and he decides to play God and he amasses these dead human limbs and makes himself a monster. And this monster he brings to life in this kind of gorgeous juxtaposition between science and sort of the supernatural. So I love that part of it. I love the themes of that. I love how we look into that as a society and how we treat people who are different, and also the power that we have and whether we should have that power. So there's a lot that's explored in this. I will always remember a certain moment in this when somebody gets hanged. I don't know why that part stuck with me for so long, but even today, one of the main things I remember from this was the hanging. When a book can do that to you, when there is always a sort of moment that sticks to you, even years later from reading it for the first time, I think it's done something good. So this is definitely one of my favourites, and I think it's also a lot of people's favourites. And then finally, of the ones that I've read and personally loved, Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. Now this is more of a satire of the Gothic. However, I do think that Jane Austen did this fantastic job in capturing the Gothic spirit when she wrote this book. So we do follow Catherine Morland and she is obsessed with Gothic fiction, and I think that she is probably one of the earliest examples of somebody who's obsessed with like popular culture and makes it her whole identity. And I feel like as book lovers we can definitely relate to that, and I think Catherine Morland is probably the most relatable Jane Austen heroine ever. That's probably a bold claim, but honestly I just love this book. Yes, we have Catherine and she is obsessed with Gothic. She talks about Udolpho and all of that. She ends up getting invited to stay at Northanger Abbey where she lets her Gothic imagination run wild with her, and it gets her into trouble. It makes her say things that aren't really there, and it's such a fantastic commentary on what makes the Gothic so brilliant. And I honestly think this is more like a love letter to the Gothic rather than like tearing it down. I genuinely think Jane Austen did such a good job at showing her love for it rather than distaste. So absolutely fantastic, would wholeheartedly recommend. I know this is probably people's like least favourite Jane Austen book, but to you I say you've got no taste. I'm kidding, it's all subjective, isn't it? So 5 more Gothic books that I own that I would love to read. One of them would be a reread. I didn't include it in my favourite Gothic novels because I can't remember a whole lot of it, to be quite honest. So I would need to reread it for me to consider it being one of my favourite Gothic books. But anyway, I'll talk about that later. My top 5 Gothic novel priority list is Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. Now I did just mention that I love Dracula, and ever since reading Dracula I've also been not just on a Gothic kick but a vampire kick, and I believe this one was the very first vampire novel. So this predates Dracula, so Dracula is not the first vampire novel by any means. Carmilla I think is, but I might be wrong on that as well. Please correct me in the comments below. Please let me know if I'm wrong. I know you guys like doing that. So this one is set deep in the Austrian forest and Laura lives alone, and then one day a woman called Carmilla ends up coming into her life, and I think this might be a little bit sapphic. Definitely here for. It better be anyway. This is so short, so there's no reason why I haven't read it yet already. I have owned this copy for probably about a year, so again there's no reason why not, but I feel like since reading Dracula I felt the need, I felt compelled, as if a vampire was hypnotizing me right now, to read all of the vampire fiction. So Carmilla is definitely top of my Gothic priority list, followed by Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë. I've never read this book before. Can you say why? It's quite intimidating. It's a chunky classic, but it's not as big as Dracula, and I was fine with Dracula, so there's no reason why I shouldn't love this one. So this one is set in the Yorkshire moors, very atmospheric, and is ultimately about the doomed love between Catherine Earnshaw and Heathcliff. So I believe they are both in families of the landed gentry, and their relationship kind of destroys everything around them. At least that's what the internet tells me. It sounds fantastic, but I don't know if that's 100% accurate. But I do have a plan. I want to read this one alongside Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë. It is Charlotte in it? Yeah. Honestly, I don't know my Brontes, but I do have a plan of reading both of these in a reading all of the stories written by the Brontë sisters. I want to do that kind of vlog next year. I did just do all of Jane Austen recently, and it really put me in the mood to read a whole author's back catalogue. And I think the Brontë sisters, while there are 3 different sisters, I feel would lend so well into that. Now, I did read this in my first year at uni, but I think I skimmed it. I don't think I took a whole lot of it in, and I do remember liking it but not loving it. So I feel like I need to give this the time and attention it requires, and then maybe, just maybe, it might make my top 7 Gothic novels, or top 10, you know. I'd love to build that list up. I believe Jane Eyre, she ends up becoming a governess or something in this house in the middle of nowhere. Is this also set in the Yorkshire moors? Okay, it says she goes to Thornfield Hall where she meets her volatile employer, Mr. Rochester. I remember there was some kind of woman in the attic angle to this as well. And honestly, I wish I could reread it right now because I don't think I'm doing this book any justice and I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for it. But I am willing to give this one another go and give it the attention and love that it deserves. I'm going to right my wrongs. So these two will definitely feature in a vlog featuring all of the Brontë sisters and all of their works, eventually. Next up, we have one that I've mentioned so many times that I wanted to read, and that is The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo, or Notre Dame de Paris, I think it's called properly. But this edition just says The Hunchback of Notre Dame. So obviously I love the Disney movie, right? And I want to do a vlog where I read all of the books that inspired the Disney Renaissance films. And The Hunchback of Notre Dame is one of them. So I will definitely be reading this at some point. But I should have read this ages ago because I also had other ideas for it. But you know me, I'm all over the place. And if you don't know me, hit the subscribe button so you can find out. Oh my god, I think my edition is falling apart. The back end of it is kind of coming loose. Ooh. Hunchback of Notre Dame, it does follow Quasimodo. He is the bell ringer of Notre Dame. All I want to do is recite what the movie is about. I don't know if the movie's accurate or not. I just want to say it follows Quasimodo and he's not allowed to leave Notre Dame. He does fall in love with Esmeralda though. I believe that's still the same. I do believe this is way darker than the Disney film. And I would argue the Disney film is dark enough, especially with that Hellfire song, which is honestly a tune. But I've been meaning to read this for the longest time and I think 2023 will definitely be the year I do that. And then finally, The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. Oh shit, oh crap, oh no, I spilled everywhere. Okay, it's got on some of my gay porn manga. Tobo, don't lick it. Okay, I love the musical. That's kind of why I really want to read The Phantom of the Opera. I will lower my expectations, of course, though. I will try and treat this as its own entity, especially since I seem to have this habit of seeing the adaptation first and loving it a bit too much. Now, when I read the source material, I end up thinking it's a little bit shite. I'm looking at you, Legally Blonde. So I believe we follow Christine and she's an opera singer and she sings in this opera house that has a phantom. God damn it, I'm shit at summarising books I've not read yet. And it's been years since I've watched the musical, so it's a bit foggy. But this phantom in this opera house does seem to be a bit infatuated with Christine. I think it's probably the same in The Phantom of the Opera, the book. So I do want to say what inspired the musical, sans the music, but I still think that I will really enjoy this. I do. I love this, just the story in general. Music or no music, I think the story's fantastic. So if the book builds on that and makes it a lot more in depth, then I genuinely think I will end up enjoying this. Fingers crossed anyway. The Phantom of the Opera is there inside my mind. So they're the wrong way around. So these are a few of my favourite Gothic novels and some that I am very excited to read. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to give a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to leave all the comments down below. Let me know your favourite Gothic novels, what you plan on reading if you haven't read them yet, and if you have read the Italian. Let me know if you've read the Italian. I want to know. I do also want to give a huge thank you to my patrons for supporting my channel and making content like this possible. If you'd like to join my Patreon or follow me on any social media, then all the links are down in the description box. And hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye!